Tokyo, March 20th, 1995. It's rush hour in the heart of the city. 5 men board 5 separate subway trains, each armed with an invisible killer. At exactly 8 a.m., in a synchronized act of terror, they pierce their plastic bags, unleashing sarin, one of the deadliest poison gases ever created. Within minutes, chaos erupts. Commuters collapse, gasping for air. 13 die in excruciating agony, while thousands more are poisoned and injured. But this was no random act of violence. It was a meticulously planned attack by a Doomsday cult, led by a man who believed the only way to save the world was to destroy it first. And this wasn't their first assault on Japan. It wouldn't be their last. How did a small spiritual group devoted to yoga and meditation transform into the most lethal terrorist organization in Japanese history? What drove them to launch multiple attacks, and what were their ultimate goals? Welcome to Cults Uncovered. This is the horrifying story of Japan's most notorious cult, Aum Shinrikyo, a group that is still very much alive till this day. Chizuo Matsumoto was born in 1955 in a small town in southern Japan. He was born partially blind with only 30% vision in one eye, while the other was completely blind. As one of 9 children in a struggling family of mat makers, young Chizuo faced a harsh world. At school for the blind, he quickly stood out for his intelligence and uncanny ability to influence and manipulate those around him. Despite his physical limitations, Chizuo's ambition burned bright. He ran for student council president multiple times, desperate for a taste of power and recognition. Each defeat only fueled his determination and growing sense of resentment toward a society that seemed to reject him. After high school, Chizuo set his sights on alternative medicine, studying acupuncture and herbal remedies. He opened a practice in Tokyo, selling Chinese herbal medicines. But even then, his hunger for success led him down unethical paths. In 1982, he was caught and fined for selling fake cures, a scandal that could have ended his career. During this time, Chizuo discovered a new path that would allow him to harness his charisma and tap into people's deepest fears and desires. He became involved with a new religious movement called Igon Shu, which blended elements of Buddhism and Hinduism. This experience opened his eyes to the power of spiritual leadership. In 1984, after a transformative 2-year trip to India, Chizuo reinvented himself. He took on a new name, Shoko Asahara, and founded his own religious organization, Umu Shinsen no Kai, which would soon evolve into the infamous Aum Shinrikyo. Asahara took to the streets of Tokyo, distributing leaflets and preaching a mesmerizing blend of Buddhist, Hindu, and Christian teachings, sprinkled with dire apocalyptic prophecies. His magnetic personality quickly drew followers from all walks of life, particularly resonating with educated young professionals from Japan's top universities. They saw in him a spiritual leader who could give meaning to their lives in an increasingly materialistic world. As Aum Shinrikyo grew, so did Asahara's control. He implemented extreme indoctrination practices, subjecting followers to isolation, intense rituals, and even hallucinogenic drugs. Physical pain and humiliation became tools to cement his control over their minds and bodies. By the late 1980s, Aum Shinrikyo had gained official religious status in Japan. What started as a small yoga class had transformed into a powerful organization with thousands of devoted followers, bringing wealth and influence to the organization. But Asahara's ambitions were far from satisfied. Asahara's sense of power grew alongside the cult. He began claiming to be not just a spiritual leader, but a living god, the reincarnation of various deities. The once rejected blind boy had become a figure of worship, commanding unwavering loyalty from thousands. This transformation set the stage for Aum Shinrikyo's expansion and its terrifying descent into violence. Asahara's transformation from rejected outsider to living god was complete, but his true ambitions would shock even his most devoted followers. Aum Shinrikyo's religious organization status in Japan provided tax breaks and shielded them from legal scrutiny, setting the stage for explosive growth. Aum's recruitment strategy targeted college campuses and busy streets. A dedicated new followers agency organized yoga and meditation classes, luring in those searching for deeper meaning in life. But Aum didn't stop there. They tapped into pop culture, creating comics and animated cartoons that wove their teachings with themes from anime and science fiction. This approach resonated with younger generations, drawing them into Aum's web of apocalyptic prophecies and conspiracy theories. A lot of Aum members were highly skilled. They were doctors, chemists, biologists, and computer programmers. Aum recruited members beyond Japan. They had access to a Russian radio station, which they used to recruit thousands of followers in Russia. Germans were also recruited into an American branch that opened in the late 80s. By the early 90s, the cult had attracted over 10,000 members. New recruits had to go through what is known as Christ initiation, involving 12 hours of isolation while using hallucinogenic drugs to erase previous thought patterns. Behind the spiritual facade, Aum built a diverse and lucrative business empire that would make any corporation jealous. They ran electronics stores, restaurants, and even a tea plantation in Sri Lanka, which provided cover for shadier dealings. The cult even ran a fitness club and a babysitting service, all while raking in millions from devoted followers. Aum's profit margins were astronomical. They sold Asahara's bathwater for $250 an ounce and a sacred potion made with his blood for a whopping $11,000. Followers were made to rent a so-called hat of happiness for a mere $10,000 per month. They were often pressured to sign over their entire estates to the cult. By the mid-90s, it's estimated that Aum Shinrikyo's wealth had ballooned to around $1 billion, making it one of the richest cults in history. However, this prosperous exterior concealed a sinister transformation. Aum was becoming one of the most dangerous organizations in the world, and its true nature was about to be revealed. The stage was set for Aum's descent into unthinkable acts of terror. Asahara's teachings took on an increasingly apocalyptic tone. He told people that the apocalypse would either happen in 1996 or happen between 1999 and 2003, and only he and his followers would survive the cataclysm. He also claimed that the United States would be responsible for Armageddon by starting World War III with Japan. These dire predictions served to justify increasingly violent actions as necessary for the cult's survival. As Asahara's paranoia grew, so did his appetite for violence. The Sakamoto family would be the first to fall victim to the cult's deadly ambitions, but they wouldn't be the last. In late 1989, Tsutsumi Sakamoto, an anti-cult lawyer, along with his wife and infant child, vanished without a trace. Their disappearance remained a mystery for years, but the truth was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Aum Shinrikyo members had abducted and murdered the entire family to silence Sakamoto's legal efforts against the cult. As the cult's paranoia intensified, so did their preparations for Doomsday. The cult forged connections in Russia with the KGB, acquiring military hardware and even attempting to obtain a nuclear weapon. To fund their activities, the cult began selling illegal drugs, hiring the Yakuza to provide the muscle. Asahara's apocalyptic visions drove the group to explore increasingly dangerous methods of mass destruction, convinced that only through violence could they save humanity from itself. Their first forays into biological warfare were as amateurish as they were alarming. In 1993, cult members climbed to the roof of their Tokyo headquarters and sprayed a liquid containing anthrax spores into the air. Their goal? Mass infection. While the attack resulted in numerous complaints about foul odors, it failed to cause any infections. Undeterred by this failure, Aum set its sights on an even deadlier pathogen, Ebola. Asahara himself traveled to Zaire, now known as the Democratic Republic of Congo, in a desperate attempt to obtain samples of the virus. His plan was to unleash it in Japan, triggering the apocalypse he had long prophesied. When biological experiments faltered, Aum pivoted to chemical weapons. In 1994, the cult began secretly manufacturing sarin gas and VX nerve agents. To test their deadly creations, they used a remote property in Australia as a proving ground. There, they unleashed sarin on a flock of sheep, killing 29 in a chilling preview of the horror to come. On June 27, 1994, Aum Shinrikyo launched its first major terrorist attack. In the quiet city of Matsumoto, cult members released a cloud of sarin gas in a residential area. Their targets were judges overseeing a lawsuit against the cult. The attack left 8 people dead and over 500 injured. Survivors described nightmarish scenes of people collapsing in spasms, foaming at the mouth as they struggled to breathe. The Matsumoto attack shocked Japan, but few suspected the involvement of a religious group. This oversight would have devastating consequences. Emboldened by their apparent success, the cult ramped up production of chemical weapons. They converted vehicles into mobile dispersal units and established facilities capable of producing thousands of kilograms of sarin annually, enough to potentially kill millions. As 1995 dawned, Aum Shinrikyo was no longer just a cult with strange beliefs. It had become a well-funded terrorist organization with a proven ability to manufacture and deploy weapons of mass destruction. Their compound near Mount Fuji had become a fortress of doom, housing hundreds of scientists and engineers dedicated to perfecting their deadly weapon. The cult that once promised enlightenment through meditation was now consumed by a twisted vision of salvation through annihilation. With their deadly arsenal in place, and their resolve hardened by fanatical devotion to Asahara, the question wasn't if they would strike again, but when and where. Little did anyone know that in just a few short months, the bustling Tokyo subway system would become the target of an attack that would shock the world and forever change Japan's sense of security. On March 20th, 1995, Tokyo awoke to what seemed like just another mundane Monday. But beneath the surface of normalcy, a sinister plan was already in motion. As millions of commuters poured into the city's sprawling subway system, 5 seemingly ordinary passengers boarded separate trains on 3 of Tokyo's busiest subway lines, converging at Kasumigaseki Station, the heart of Tokyo's government district. Each carried a package wrapped in newspaper, concealing plastic bags filled with liquid sarin. At precisely 8 a.m., the attack began. Using sharpened umbrella tips, the cultists punctured their sarin-filled bags on 5 different trains. As the deadly gas seeped out, panic spread through the carriages. Passengers began coughing, their vision blurring. The scenes were straight out of a nightmare. People's eyes rolled back in their heads as the siren attacked their nervous systems. Some collapsed, convulsing on the floor. Others stumbled out onto platforms, unknowingly spreading the contamination further. The scene quickly descended into chaos. Commuters desperately tried to escape the toxic fumes, trampling over those who had already fallen. The sarin's effects were horrific. Victims vomited blood, experienced violent seizures, and struggled to breathe as their lungs filled with fluid. Emergency services were overwhelmed. The subway authorities made a critical decision to shut down the affected lines, but this trapped sarin-filled trains between stations, worsening the situation for those trapped inside. Paramedics rushing to help soon became victims themselves, incapacitated by exposure to the gas they didn't yet understand. As news of the attack spread, Tokyo ground to a halt. Streets filled with ambulances and confused, terrified commuters. Hospitals were inundated with thousands of patients, many still carrying traces of sarin on their clothes, inadvertently poisoning medical staff trying to treat them. The police investigation began almost immediately, but the scale and nature of the attack left authorities reeling. Who could be behind such a horrific act? The answer would shock the nation. Within days, police raids across Japan uncovered a chilling truth. The attack wasn't the work of foreign terrorists, but a homegrown cult that had been hiding in plain sight. Aum Shinrikyo facilities yielded stockpiles of chemical weapons, including sarin, along with evidence linking the group to previous incidents like the Matsumoto attack. As the death toll rose to 13, with over 6,000 injured, the world watched in horror. Japan's image as a safe, orderly society was shaken to its core. The attack exposed glaring weaknesses in the country's emergency response systems and raised troubling questions about how Aum had operated so freely for so long. The subway attack marked a turning point. It was a wake-up call for Japanese authorities, leading to increased scrutiny of Aum Shinrikyo and its operations. The cult that had once enjoyed legal protections as a religious organization was now unmasked as one of the most dangerous terrorist groups in the country's history. As the nation grappled with the aftermath, one question loomed large. How would Japan respond to this unprecedented act of domestic terrorism? Japan's response to the subway attack was swift and devastating. As police raided Aum facilities across the country, they uncovered horrors beyond their darkest imaginations. What they found wasn't just evidence of a terror attack, but an arsenal that could have wiped out millions. The raids revealed a chilling truth. Aum Shinrikyo had been preparing for war. Police discovered facilities capable of mass-producing sarin, mustard gas, and VX nerve agents. The cult had stockpiled enough chemicals to potentially kill 4 million people. But the revelations didn't stop there. In a shocking twist, authorities found a Russian military helicopter at the cult's headquarters, along with plans for building tanks and heavy artillery. The cult's military ambitions were staggering. They had formed a fighting force, armed with AK-47 and trained for combat. Even as authorities closed in, Aum launched retaliatory strikes. On March 30th, just days after the attack, they nearly succeeded in assassinating the head of Japan's National Police Agency, narrowly missing their target. They released gas at Yokohama Station, injuring 400 people. Another attempt to detonate a cyanide bomb at Shinjuku Station was thwarted only by a faulty detonator. As investigators dug deeper, a pattern of violence emerged. Aum had been silencing dissent and eliminating threats for years. Ex-members were assassinated with VX chemical weapons. In February 1995, just weeks before the subway attack, the cult had kidnapped and incinerated officials who posed a threat to their operations. Even more disturbing, 9 Aum members suspected of disloyalty had been executed by their comrades. The manhunt for Shoko Asahara, Aum's enigmatic leader, intensified. On May 16, 1995, police finally cornered him, finding the self-proclaimed guru hiding in a wall of a cult building. As Asahara was led away in handcuffs, few could have predicted the bizarre turn of events that would follow. In a surreal twist, Asahara's 13-year-old daughter attempted to take control of the cult. Her brief reign of terror culminated in a bomb that nearly killed Tokyo's governor. But Aum's most audacious plot was yet to come. On July 4, 1995, 4 months after the subway attack, the cult planted hydrogen cyanide bombs in subway stations across Tokyo. Had they detonated, the death toll could have reached a staggering 100,000. Only faulty detonators prevented an unimaginable tragedy. As key members were arrested one by one, many offering shocking confessions that painted a disturbing picture of life within Aum. These testimonies revealed a world of brainwashing, abuse, and murder that had gone unchecked for years. But bringing Aum to justice proved to be a monumental task. The sheer scale of the cult's crimes, coupled with its extensive network of sympathizers, presented significant legal challenges. Prosecutors faced a complex web of evidence spanning multiple attacks and conspiracies. The trial of Shoko Asahara alone would stretch on for an unprecedented 8 years. As the legal proceedings unfolded, Asahara's behavior became increasingly erratic. He made long, rambling speeches in court, claiming a miracle would save him from punishment. Later, he fell into prolonged silence, refusing to communicate even with his lawyers and family. The world watched as what the press dubbed the trial of the century reached its conclusion. On February 27, 2004, the verdict was finally handed down. Shoko Asahara, found guilty on 13 counts of murder and dozens of other charges, was sentenced to death by hanging. The decision sent shockwaves through Japan, a country where capital punishment is rarely used. In the years that followed, Aum Shinrikyo's top leaders exhausted every possible appeal. But on July 6, 2018, justice was finally served. Asahara and 6 other cult members were executed, bringing a grim chapter in Japanese history to a close. Yet even as the cult's leadership faced their final reckoning, troubling questions remained. How had Aum Shinrikyo managed to operate for so long without detection? And more importantly, What lasting impact would this traumatic event have on Japanese society? As the dust settled on Aum Shinrikyo's reign of terror, many believed the cult's story had reached its end. But the execution of Shoko Asahara and his top lieutenants in 2018 was far from the final chapter. In fact, it marked the beginning of a surprising and troubling new era for the infamous organization. Like a hydra growing new heads, Aum Shinrikyo split into two main factions, Aleph and Hikari no Wa. These groups claimed to have renounced violence and distanced themselves from Asahara's teachings, but Japanese authorities weren't buying it. The government implemented strict surveillance policies, keeping a watchful eye on both groups' activities. Despite the scrutiny, these Aum offshoots showed an alarming resilience. They continued to attract new members, particularly young people disillusioned with society. In 2014, reports surfaced of a new generation of Aum admirers, drawn to the group's promise of spiritual fulfillment and community. They surround themselves with Asahara's teachings, reading his books, and decorating their homes with his portraits. The appeal of Aum's teachings didn't stop at Japan's borders. In Russia, authorities found themselves grappling with a persistent Aum presence. Some reports suggest that over 30,000 Russians are currently involved with the cult. The cult's reach extended to other European countries, with Montenegro expelling 58 suspected members in 2016. They were mostly Russian nationals, with only 4 of them reported to be Japanese. A BBC report indicated that the cult also operated in Belarus and Ukraine, highlighting its ability to adapt and spread internationally. Back in Japan, courts wrestled with how to handle these evolving threats. In a dramatic turn of events, the Tokyo High Court reinstated surveillance on Aleph in February 2019, overturning a lower court's decision. The judges cited ongoing concerns about the group's potential danger to society. But the most chilling reminder of Aum's lingering influence came in 2019, when a car attack in Tokyo, carried out by an Aum sympathizer, shocked the nation. The attacker claimed it was retaliation for the executions of Aum members, proving that the cult's ideology still held sway over some individuals. As Japan grappled with these ongoing threats, experts raised alarms about the long-term psychological impact of Aum's legacy. Former members struggled to reintegrate into society, bearing the scars of the cult's manipulative practices. The broader Japanese public, too, found itself confronting a shattered sense of security and lingering trauma from the subway attack. The persistence of Aum-related groups poses difficult questions for Japanese society. How can a democracy balance religious freedom with public safety? What drives people to join destructive cults, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of their dangers? As we reflect on Aum Shinrikyo's dark legacy, one thing becomes clear: the allure of apocalyptic ideologies remains a potent force in our world. The cult that brought terror to Tokyo may have been defeated, but the conditions that allowed it to flourish still exist. Vigilance, education, and a deeper understanding of human psychology may be our best defenses against future Aum Shinrikyos waiting to emerge from the shadows. What are your thoughts about Aum Shinrikyo's reign of terror? How do you think society can balance religious freedom with public safety? Please share in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Click the card on the screen to check out our other cult stories. Always remember, beware the leader and never drink the Kool-Aid.